So I'm pretty much done with my build. Let me go ahead and show you some of the things that I've done. Obviously I've glued together the two halves, and I used the contact type adhesive around the motor area. And the reason for that was I had a little bit more of a gap in the fuselage at that point. It didn't come together real tightly, and I didn't want to use something like a super glue there. So I used the contact adhesive, and also I know that's very strong. So I used that here, and I used super glue every place else. I then also reinforced along the seam up at the top here and around the motor housing with some fiber reinforced packaging tape. I did it along the nose, across the top, and also along the sides. You'll also may be able to make out, I've got some on the top of the wing and along the leading edge of the wing. And I'll go ahead and flip it over and show you as well. I've got some along the entire length of the bottom and a little bit on the wingtips on the underside and across the bottom of the tail. You'll also notice that I've got a carbon fiber reinforcing rod that came with the kit. I've glued that in and the reinforcing tapes on top of that. But you'll also notice that there's a reinforcing rod on the horizontal stabilizer. On many of the sites that I saw for recommendations and mods for this kit, this was one that I had seen. So I had cut in a groove and purchased that was a 3mm carbon fiber tube, glued it in, inset it in very much in a similar way as the one down the length of fuselage. Also, another mod that you can't see is the carbon fiber rod that they give you with the kit. A number of people recommended reinforcing that. So I took the 3mm rod, put that inside of the rod that they provided. I used glue inside of there to hold those two together and help stiffen that up as well. So I've got that reinforced carbon fiber rod in there. You'll also notice, let me while I've got on the bottom here, you'll also notice there's a couple marks here. The mark going across, that is my measured point of CG, center of gravity. The other point simply, I made a balancer, and that's where I position it. Obviously, everybody recommends making sure that you've got your CG correct, and it's going to be very critical on this plane that I've got that correctly located. So those are for my CG. You'll also notice I made some decals. I had taken off all the decals because I did not want to simply put the reinforced tape over top of the existing ones. I wanted it to look somewhat good. So I've got the decals that are on the wingtips, basically all the same ones. I did some work, scanned them in, made some changes, came up with my own color set for those as well. I'm going to be putting some words and lettering on here. But for the most part, I've got them done. I've also have them done on the side of the fuselage. So I made some new decals for that. Back to that center of gravity, I made a balancing stand consisting of a couple of dowel rods. And this is that the center distance that I showed you on the underside of that wing, and simply glued those dowel rods into a board so that I can take my plane, line it up on those 2 points, and verify whether or not I've got my CG properly located. And you'll see right now I'm a little bit tail heavy, and that's fine, because I also made some changes on the inside of the fuselage. Right now I don't have a lot of stuff on here. I don't have my on-screen display, I don't have my telemetry transmitter antenna on here, I don't have my camera on here, I don't have the transmitter for the camera, so there's certainly going to be more weight towards the front of this plane. So I certainly am happy that I'm able to get right now my CG further back. But I know once I add those other things, it's going to become more of an issue to try to get this balance. I think it's going to end up being nose heavy. So one of the things that I did is I originally had planned on the battery being more towards the front end, the nose of the plane, and that battery is fairly heavy, so I wanted to be able to move it further back into the fuselage. So I ended up, I'm going to pull it out of here. I do have Velcro in here, but I have not yet I put it in there, but I don't have it right now, so the Velcro side is down. It's a little bit hard to get out. So what I've done is there was a piece of foam going across as part of the fuselage in the very bottom. I've cut that out so that my battery will lay in this section right underneath my APM. And I also took a little piece out further back to allow this to go back a little bit further. So the battery does sit very nicely under there. It does fit underneath the electronics chassis, and everything fits in there pretty well. It can also go further forward if I need to. So I've got a good bit, if I don't put a lot in my electronics chassis, for balancing this out. However, if I add in my FPV, that's certainly going to make this nose heavy. I can stick the FPV battery in the back, standing up, and then the other one in front. That seems like that's going to work okay. So we'll see. I think that's going to be an issue that I'm going to have to continually address as I add some of the additional components on here. I have taken this outside, and just for testing purposes, make sure everything is working as far as transmitter, receiver, motor, ailerons, and all that kind of stuff. Did not fly it. So I simply laid it on the ground, gave it full throttle. It did inch on the ground a little bit, but there was no way that it was going to take off, nor did I want it to. It was a very windy day. So everything seems to be okay. I'm going to start working on the electronics part of this, start working on the software end of this, get this so that I can do some initial testing. Probably one of my first tests will simply be to let it take off and do maybe loitering around a point, the home point or something like that. So I need to dig into the software a little bit more before I figure out exactly what I'm going to be doing there. So I got everything pretty well underway, and please subscribe and I'll keep you up to date on my videos. Thank you.